with serving food to a blind person, there's a couple things that you're going to want to remember, depending the style of food. So sometimes, like when you go to a restaurant, you don't really have to worry too much because it's a set menu. Most of the time, you don't have to get anything. Salads are a pain. Some things that aren't cut up are a pain. Things like that. So when you serve food to a blind person, there's a couple things to remember. You're going to try your best to separate them on the plate, giving them space to find each food item. You need me? And then the other thing you're going to do is you're going to want to make sure that it's easy to tell them where the food is located. So with that in mind, we're going to do a regular dinner. So I have chicken strips. I'm going to do 2 chicken strips onto the plate. And then I've also got some coleslaw. Those of you that don't like coleslaw, that's okay. So let me switch this around so you can see what I'm doing. So we're going to put the coleslaw in a different corner up here. And then we're going to do mashed potatoes and gravy. Now, if you're doing something that has a sauce on it, like mashed potatoes and gravy, generally speaking, switch hands here for a second. You are going to want to put the gravy or whatever you're putting on top in the middle. So normally what I do is I make a little hole right here in the middle. See this hole? And then when I take my gravy, move it like that. So when I put my gravy on the mashed potatoes, instead of it being all over the plate, maybe they don't want it on their chicken, it's all in one spot. And then, not to leave out the deviled eggs I just made, because you always need a deviled egg. Now if there's a bread, sometimes I will tend to put the bread here in the middle. Sometimes we can put the deviled egg in the middle. It really depends. But now we have a plate ready to serve. So when I hand this to the blind person, I'm not going to hand it like this. What I'm going to do is make sure that the meat is at 6 o'clock. So think of this plate as a clock. You're going to have your clock hands. So the meat is almost always going to be facing the closest to them. So this is 6. Then I'm going to go around the clock, normally starting at 12. So 12 o'clock is going to be mashed potatoes and gravy. 3 o'clock is coleslaw. 6 o'clock is, of course, going to be their meat. And then 9 o'clock is going to be deviled eggs. So it's not super difficult, but it does take a little skill, so you try not to use the middle unless maybe it's a deviled egg or some bread. You can always do smaller portions. Now if it's a buffet, a lot of times, depending on the level of vision, not every blind person is going to be okay with going through the line. Sometimes you'll tell them what's up there, and then from there you are going to be asked, they'll say, oh, well, can you get me this, this, and this? You put it on their plate, etc. It's not too difficult, but again, every person's different. There are some people who prefer to hold their plate and do it. Growing up around a blind person, the one thing that you get really, really used to doing is grabbing 2 plates. So anytime we go through a buffet line, we go out to eat, or we're at a meeting, I learned to be a waitress. Mom plate one section of my arm, my plate in another. We do both at the same time. Lately I'm a little more clumsy, so I've been doing it one at a time. But you tend to learn to do the multitasking. So I know if we're going to go, say, to Golden Corral, I know my mom's going to want fried chicken. She's going to want okra. She's going to want lima beans. And you learn some of their basic foods, and you get used to it. A lot of times we'll go to different events, and they'll be like, oh, look, you're taking 2 plates. Do you know how annoying that is? No, I'm not taking 2 plates. I'm feeding 2 people because my mom needs a plate too. So if you see a blind person in a buffet, or they're coming to a meeting and there's going to be a line of food, offer to help, or offer to help the child. A lot of times I'm very used to saying, no, I'm fine, I can do this, I've been doing it for years, doesn't bother me. But there are times when, hey, it'd be nice to have a break. Sure, you can go get mom's food. So be willing to look for those moments where they might need help, or maybe if they have low vision, there's sometimes a difference that's very hard. So say there's pizza, there's a meat lovers and there's a pepperoni. Well, maybe they don't have enough vision to know the difference between the two. Or one time I thought it was like a potato chip and it was plantains. No one labeled it. So foods that you're not familiar with. The other thing I'm going to cover real quick, because I'm not going to be on here too long, is appetizers, snacks. So a lot of times you go to a party and we have snacks, or you come to my house, I'm always going to have snacks because it's the one time I get to cheat on all my diets. So how do you do snacks? And mainly things that are dip related, because a blind person is not always going to be able to find the dip. Well, that's why you bring the dip to them. So let me move a few things out of the way, and we're going to do that. I'm going to show you how we do a plate that's going to be for a snack. So let me angle you guys here so you can see. So I'm going to start out with our chips and dip. Normally what I do is I put the chips on the facing towards the outside corner, and then you take your dip and you put it in the middle and you kind of angle it so that all of the chips that you've piled on here, all of the chips right here, they all have dip. So your blind person isn't trying to be like, oh my goodness, how in the world do I find the dip? You put everything already right there. So same thing with veggies and dip. Veggies and dip are very complicated sometimes. I only have carrots today, so I'm going to put my carrots again in a corner. I'm going to take my dip. I can open it. And I'm just going to pour it right there on the ends. And if you've got mixed veggies, so a lot of times you'll have broccoli, carrot, celery, all those types of things. So just make sure to the best of your ability that you have everything with dip on it so that they're not having to look for it. Also, make sure you don't put too much, because too much dip, then you're dealing with, so what do I do now? Or they tilt their plate and they now have dip everywhere, or all over their shirt, and they might not know that. So, trying to judge that. And then the last thing I have over here, because I just love appetizer snacky stuff, is fruit with peanut butter. Again, is like a dip. Normally, if I were serving this, and it's someone who trusts my fingers, I would smear it about halfway up. It's not smearing too well today. So halfway up, and again setting it in a corner. So smearing it halfway up, setting it in a corner. Now we have a plate of appetizers. So we've got our apples, we have our chips and dip, and we have our carrots. I turn it this way so y'all can see. So that is how we generally do food. So one of the questions